do want to start off by saying is that HB 117, all of us who are in the audience, who are here by virtue of the fact that somebody is trying to make sure that we are getting the services that we need, you need to be creating some kind of letter writing campaign to get that bill passed. Because it's going to benefit everybody in this room if people are getting better, getting the services they need, and they're not breaking in your car, stealing your car radio. Now, that's got to be worth something. Okay, so I'm putting it out there right now. You can write it down on your little books you got out of, when you registered, that Sharon Wise said today to mobilize, get the peers together, get the people that's coming through your program, the people when you do your intake forms, give them some kind of little letter to sign, to mail it to whomever you need to mail it to get that passed. Now, when I come back next year, I want somebody up here saying it was passed, the House, the Congress, and everybody and their mama passed that bill. Okay, I don't want no stuff because I ain't forgot all my skills. Okay? And then the other thing I want to say before I begin is that the 10 new prisons for the $4 billion. Now, that don't make no kind of sense in the world to me. Because look at what you can get for $19,000. Okay? Really? I mean, who does that, right? $19,000, somebody believed in me, made me feel useful, gave me a little job, I cleaned myself up, I got out of the prison system, had some wraparound services, about 19 G's, and look at what you get. Okay? I mean, really, $4 billion, that'll buy a whole lot of people like me. So I just want to throw that out there. I didn't mean to start off with my big mouth all yelling and screaming all over the room. You know, but that was something I heard that I didn't know, and I just wanted to put that out there. I'd like to congratulate the 2012 Florida Partners in Crisis Annual Conference. I mean, they invited me. Didn't nobody want me? And when I found out they had been looking for me, Miss Gail had been looking for me, somebody sent me an email saying this woman named Gail is looking for you, and she wants you to come to this conference. And when I found out it was going to be a bunch of judges and sheriffs and police and people up in there, I said, they done found a whole charge. I ain't going to Florida. You know, I mean, because I've never been in a room full of people like you all, as well as my peers and service providers and people who are making the difference in people's lives, unless I was getting ready to be sentenced. I'm going to just put it out there. You know what I'm saying? When I was in Miami a couple of weeks ago with Judge Lightman and his team, I was sitting next to a judge on one side, a prosecutor on the other side. I looked back, it was about 100 police back there. I said, it's getting ready to be some stuff up in there. And I'm going to let you know right now, I got on my 5-inch heels, but I'm running. I'm not going down without a fight. But I realized that my fight isn't the fight that I used to fight. That my fight is about something else today. It's about making sure that I have a better quality of life and that the people that you all are serving have a better quality of life. And that you all have a better quality of life because guess what? We do recover. Now, Gail talked about my life, and some of y'all might cry when you hear about some of the things that happened to me. But that's the key there. There was nothing never wrong with me. Something happened to me. Something happened to me to make me shoot dope and leave my children and eat out of a trash can. Something happened to me to make me want to run away from home and leave where I should have been comfortable and live under a bridge. Something happened to me. But the question was always, what's wrong with you? And sometimes asking the right question can change somebody's life. Compassion isn't a feeling, it's a force. And all behavior, it has meaning. I started going into the system, the mental health system, juvenile detention at 5 years old. Now, like the other judge said, I know I look young, so, you know, y'all go ahead and clap if y'all want to. But I was 5 years old, and I believe that my parents, my mother, my only caregiver, who was also my abuser, probably did the best that she could. But they didn't understand me as an artist child. I was a child at 5 years old who was sculpting and painting pictures like some of the ones you might see today. I was the child who always had all of this energy trying to act and be out there doing the Diana Ross and all this kind of stuff. And my mother didn't understand my energy. So I remember coming home, guess I was probably in 3rd grade, and running home, Mommy, look at my picture. And it was a picture of a tree that had people falling out of it. It had eyes and it had fingers with blood on it. And my mother looked at it and she was like, what is wrong with you? And I remember later on that evening, the pastor at our church and some other members coming to my house, laying me on the floor like the cross and putting water on me, trying to exorcise me, saying that I was a demon child. And what I was drawing, because my abuse happened pre-verbal, is I was trying to communicate that I was being sexually abused by my mother's boyfriend, but being a little child, I didn't have the words. So I began to draw art that was talking about what was happening to me, not what's wrong with me. By 9 years old, I was running away from home. There was a lot of drugs being done in my house. I would find dirty needles in the bathroom and different places around the house. So at 9 years old, I was doing what I saw. I started skin popping. And I would take the needles and put them under, do what I saw. You know, and so when people started seeing that I was breaking into houses and running with the kids at 11, 12 years old who was doing bad things and snatching purses and stuff like that, the first thing they wanted to do was incarcerate me. And during that time, my mother was on her 6th child. I have a sister that we're only 10 months apart. So there was always babies in the house, and I never got a chance to, know what it's like to have your mother. And I'm going to say this right. I get mad sometimes, but I'm working on it. I don't get mad and do nothing, so I don't want nobody putting that out there. But I get a little, I feel a little something in my stomach when I see a mother pick a child up and kiss that child and nuzzle that child under their neck and hold them and be telling them positive things like, I love you. Because I don't know what that feels like, And because I didn't know what it felt like, my whole thing was, I have to numb this stuff. I have to numb my feelings. My mother didn't tell me she loved me. My mother told me she wished she'd have flushed me, that she wished I hadn't have been born. That's the kind of stuff my mother told me. So in my little child mind, 13, 14, 15, I'm shooting dope, I'm smoking coke, I'm doing all kind of stuff. And you know what comes with that. The criminal justice system. Jails, institutions, and almost death. Living under the bridge. Hanging out with other kids, snatching purses and living in abandoned buildings, which gets you locked up. And nobody ever asked me, what happened? It was always, what's wrong with you? You only 15 years old. You done been in and out of juvie. You done been here and there and all these different mental hospitals and all these different institutions. Nobody ever took the time to give me the services that I need at that time, wrap them around me when I left. That might ring a bell to some folks. I know nobody in this room, probably somebody y'all know, who when people get out of jail and these different types of institutions, that services are wrapped around them. Because for me, jail became my family. That was the only time I got shown some love. That was the only time I got the mental health services that I need. That was the only time I got some clean underwear. And you'd be surprised how clean underwear keep you coming back when you live the hellish life that I lived and some of the people I know. So sometimes when you have those high rates of recidivism and people are constantly coming back through your system, you they auntie and they grandma them. You Pookie them and grandpa. And sometimes that family becomes the only thing that makes you feel whole. And for me, it was that way for a long time. But there's something very interesting happened when I was about 19 years old. By this time, I was doing every drug known to man. And I remember walking into a facility and the lady said, well, what kind of drugs do you use? I said, gas, fumes, liquids, and solids. Whatever's on the table is my drug of choice. And I remember her saying, well, you're getting ready to go to jail again. But this time, you're not going where your mama and your cousin can come and visit you. We're sending you to Seattle, Washington, to King County. And that was when they started sending prisoners further and further away. I was a part of that, and it wasn't fun. But something beautiful happened when I was there. It was the first time that I had ever been locked up, and I got services. I got services for the depression, for my anxiety. But when I came home after 18 months, guess what happened? Service is gone. I had to hitchhike from Seattle, Washington, all the way back to Chicago where I grew up, and I was beaten up and raped all down the road as I got home. So y'all know what I did. I cursed y'all. I said, you know what? I'm going to show them. And I went back out there doing some more research. I also took my children. I had 2 children by this time, and I gave them to the system. I ended up in foster care. Guess what happens when you don't treat that person? Their children end up in the foster care. I ended up doing all kind of drugs. My son was the only one who ended up doing drugs. I didn't know what happened to my daughter. She was only 6 weeks old when I surrendered her to this church. But let me tell you something. Having people like you all who get it, my life has been restored. I don't live like that anymore. It took a long time for me to actually get it. But what began to happen is that people were wrapping services around me and didn't even know it. So I want to this is a take home for the people in the audience. Know why you got in this business. Because when I first presented, where I really wanted some help, I had on this blonde wig hanging down my back like Cher. I had these blue contact lenses that I had stole so I couldn't see out of them. I was blind as hell. I had a skirt on so short you could see my tonsils. And I was smelling like urine and alcohol. But guess what? We don't stay that way. When people come and they present to you in a certain way, and the person might have come through your doors maybe about 24 times, it might be that 25th time they get it. I remember the lady saying, come on in, sit right here, but she never looked at me. She handed me the papers like this, go over there and sit down. Some folk might say, well, all she did was not look at you. But do you know how degrading that is when you come somewhere for services and the person don't even look at you? And for me, it made me feel ashamed. It made me revisit all the things that I felt as a little girl. Growing up with shame and guilt and feeling abandoned and feeling unloved. That's why we have to remember why we got in this business, y'all. It's a labor of love kind of work that we do because you know you're not going to get rich doing it. We are some of the most underpaid people in the whole world, the people that are involved in other people's lives trying to change them and do something different and think outside the box, to be innovative and to come up with some new concept, realizing that people are not cookie cut. Sometimes it's not in a book what happened to me, y'all. Sometimes it may not be behind some kind of thing you learned or some other while you was in graduate school. And I believe that Miss Kaufman, the woman that gave me, some clean underwear and gave me a couple hours to get back to her program, that she probably could have been fired for that. But she did it because she realized that at that time, when I came in there looking like a crackhead Barbie, that I was ready. I was beyond ready. I got tired of going in front of them judges. And the last thing I hear before I walk behind them doors is there anything you want to say before we hand down sentencing? I got tired of that being the last thing I hear before I go away again. And I remember coming out and people be like, well, Sharon, where you been? Oh, I've been on tour. That's what we call it when we go from jail to jail to jail to jail. We get a chance to access all the taxpayers' dollars flying around, because everybody wants their time right. So you go from Montgomery County to Oak Park, then you go out to Dwight, then you go somewhere else. Everybody wants their time. Just having you shuffling around and traveling around instead of me being on some kind of college tour. But nobody was willing to invest in that at the time. But things have changed. The people who are represented today, y'all are challenging us. You're challenging us to think more deeply about the people that you're interacting with. And for me, that looks like a peer specialist. I know that when I go around and I travel all around the United States, I've gone out the country a couple of times because I ain't on parole no more. Because, see, I used to have to get a letter, saying that I can go here and there and the third, but I don't have to do that anymore. And when I go around and I'm asking people and I'm talking to people and there's a room full of people like this, and I'm like, how are you using the people that you're serving? Are there any peer specialists in the room? People being served. Now, I saw about 7 to 8 people raise their hand. It should be half of the people, because you know what? That's your investment. Showing up to say this is what your money bought. Now, if that investment was cash, you'd probably have about $100,000 in your bank account. But sometimes in these systems of care or miscare, depending on how you look at it, we don't use the people that we serve to empower the system. I mean, who better knows than the people that's coming through your program? That's one thing that I admire Florida for. You all are the only state, and I want y'all to give yourself some dap for this, but y'all are the only state that actually use peer specialists in roles that are not condescending, like janitor, taking stamps off of envelopes. I go to some places and I ain't going to put them on blast today. I'm threatening, but I'm not going to put them on blast today. That's what they peer specialists do. Sweep up out front. Get the leaves from out the gutter. I walked into one of y'all conferences a couple of years ago and saw some of y'all peer specialists taking a picture with Judge Lightman, and they had on nice suits and ties. They was up there. They was very articulate, because that's who we are. Something happens to us and we turn into lead. Something happens to us that throws our life totally off balance, and we end up, sleeping under bridges and doing some of the bad things that y'all end up. And I want to be responsible. Every time I got locked up, 9 times out of 10, I had done something. So I'm not taking that away from you. But I'm saying we don't stay that way. Something happens that moves. For me to give my children away and shoot dope in my neck, something had to happen to me. Do y'all actually think I wanted to live, I would feel safe more under a bridge than in a safe bed somewhere? But as I continue to have my resilience reborn, because babies are born resilient, my life began to change. And some of y'all went from stakeholder to shareholder. Some people might ask, well, what's the difference? Let me tell you the difference real simply. A stakeholder is the mental health system, homeless services, juvenile system, justice system, who work in a vacuum. Mental health better not cross this line, and homeless services better not come over here. But let me tell you something, you're serving the same person, because we hit all your systems. I went from children's services to young adult services to, juvenile detention, adult services, and homeless services, and mental health services, then substance abuse services, all kind of court services, and parenting. I hit all the systems, because nobody ever addressed what the real problem was, and at the base of it, and you'll hear more about this tomorrow, was trauma. When trauma is not addressed, the cost to the system is priceless. And when I think about that $4 billion, I'm going to be thinking about that for a minute. That's what it's going to cost us, y'all. It is fabulous to note that there's a lot of benefits from working with the people that you all serve. And I'm just going to spend a minute on this, because I know I can go on, and it'll be a big old hanger pulling me off, and I'll be fighting, no, I got a couple of more words, So they got the little time card, especially for me. But I realize that they are rare jewels. That when I'm going around the country and I'm working with peer specialists and I'm training them to become certified, and I'm working with them on all 3 levels of advocacy, which is individual, systems, and class, I realize that those, the people that's being served, they got all of this information, but they're not being used. And that's the one thing they tell me. Sharon, they don't ask us nothing. I'm like, well, do you have a peer advisory council within the hub or whatever the service is? No. Or yes, but all we do is we pass the newsletter out. You're missing the boat, folks, if you don't use the people that you're serving. When we have our annual fundraisers, and when we go to our funders every year at my drop-in center in Washington, D.C., which is where I live, we don't send Sharon or the CEO or the COO or the financier. We send the people that are being served, because people want to know what their money bought. People want to see the people that came in looking like I was, who are now working, going to school, being productive members of society. That's who people want to see. They don't want to see me, even though, I've won national awards and all this kind of stuff. That stuff would fit in a hypodermic needle if I take a drink. So I make sure 23 years later, I've been clean 23 years now, I make sure that I keep my focus on my real prize. And that's making sure, one, I don't end up back where I started, because it's likely. I'm not immune to it. And that when I go around and I speak, that I'm telling people, use the people that you serve in. At my drop-in center, the peers, we go to hospital emergency rooms when somebody come in crisis. When people are going to court, we meet them in the courtroom. When people are getting out of jail, we meet them at the gate and pick them up and take them to a meeting, or we take them to We All We Got so they can get some toiletries and stuff like that. But we need y'all help too. We need those wraparound services. And it should happen, not that I'm trying to tell y'all what to do, but I am, long before that person get ready to be released. And pre-release, they should be having some kind of mental health clinic should be set up if that's what needed. The substance abuse program, if that's what needed. Maybe connect them with a sponsor, because I'm sure y'all got NA and AA meetings inside your organization. I'm almost sure of that. They're there and they connected with a sponsor. If they need, whatever that person needs, wrap it around them before they get out. Because I'm going to tell you, when you don't, I'm coming out, and if I need some clothes, I might steal yours. If I need something, I might end up back in the system because those things were not provided for me. And the main thing, if you're doing any kind of trauma therapy, make sure that you got all kind of services, even more so to wrap around that purpose. Because once you open up that can of worms with trauma, you have opened up something. And I find that too. Sometimes I'm like, do you do trauma assessments at places? Like, yes. Do you do any kind of trauma screening? Yes. Well, what do you do with that information? Oh, we just file it. And that person is in your cell with a big old open wound. They done told you all their business, stuff that they thought they would take to the grave, and now they're sitting in your cell buck naked, needing something, but they don't have anything to put in there. I feel in my heart that these systems of care believe in recovery, hope, and resilience. And they believe in reconciliation of the family. And that's what happened for me right before I got off of probation. Somebody said, Sharon, have you ever thought about getting your children back? And I thought about it, and then I thought about it. And I was like, let me see. But I think what was more fearful for me was going back in front of the judge who I had cussed out real bad in Chicago. By this time, I had got out of prison for the last time after doing 18 months. They moved me up to Washington, D.C. through a program that some of y'all might remember called HIDTA, high-intensity drug trafficking area. They had just started moving prisoners around, and I got an opportunity. They came to me and said, you've been getting in trouble so long. If you could change your life or get an environmental change, where would you go? I said, I want to go where the president lives. And I believe if they'd have told the president I was coming, he would be like, no, we good. No, that's all right, Sharon, don't have to come up here. We all right, and I remember going up there, and that's where my life began to change. And I remember when the court system contacted me through my mother saying, your son has not been adopted, but your mother wants to adopt it, but your daughter, she's gone. She was 6 weeks old. She was legally adopted shortly after she came in the system. Would you like to get your son? Thought about it, I was like, I want to, but that judge, I'm going to have to go back in front of him. And I remember the last time when that judge said, no, you can't get your children back, get out of my courtroom. I remember standing there like I described earlier and him saying, do you know who your children's fathers are? And I remember sitting up there and putting my hand on my hip saying, you might be the father, and being real nasty and disrespectful and talking to that man real greasy and everything. I remember him finding me in contempt. I remember that. But then I had somebody in my life at the time, my probation officer, a good mental health counselor, a good therapist, and a psychiatrist who was not calling me 152-268. He was calling me Sharon. See, one thing I know about this thing of recovery and feeling useful and feeling helpful and wanting my life back and reborn and having my resilience reborn is that it was people like you all who made me feel useful. That's one of the necessary ingredients when you're working with people like me. Just make me feel, don't call me the names my mother called me. If you got to arrest me, I understand I did something wrong. I get that part. But if you got to go through my purse, what is the problem with you saying, look, we're going to have to go through your purse? Instead of just snatching my purse from me and rambling through it and stuff. And then somebody coming up behind me, not realizing I got a trauma history, trying to, check me out or whatever, and I turn around and punch them. Because they don't know I got a trauma history. Because when people came up behind me, they was coming up behind me to do something to me. At least in my mind, that's the way I thought. So I went to court in Chicago, Illinois, and the judge, he didn't even recognize me. I had the afro looking tight. I had patted it down for 20 minutes. And the eyebrows was plucked, and I was looking good and smelling good, which was a change. And he looked at me, and he squinted his eyes. He couldn't believe it was me. And I was there, yes, sir, Your Honor. Yes, sir. And peers, that's what I'm talking about. We have to be responsible for our own recovery too. It is not up to the system to be our everything to our everybody. We have to do something different too. And for me, it meant cleaning up my act. For me, it meant becoming a good parent. For me, it meant that whole year they came back and forth, that Chicago, Illinois incurred a cost having somebody come back and forth to D.C., making sure I had an adequate home for my son. And me making sure I had an adequate home for my son. Me making sure I had a job. And that I wasn't coming up with no whole rack of excuses about why I couldn't go to work today. I didn't have any furniture, but we had some nice pilots on the floor. And I remember getting a letter saying that I had gotten legal custody of my son back. He was 15 years old by this time. But because he had a trauma history, he started running away at 16, and the cycle just kind of went back over again. I know for me that I need you all to understand this one thing, that the things that I described about the way I was looking and smelling, we don't stay that way. If that's the only image that you could put in your mind, how I looked when I got here, and how I was feeling when I got here, how when I would present for services, people would create what they called a treatment plan based on my deficits. How can you create a plan of care if all you know is how many times I've been arrested, what kind of drugs I use, how many children I have that are in foster care, this and that and the third? That's more of a damn mistreatment plan. That's not a treatment plan, and it certainly ain't a plan of care. We have to change our language from what do you bring to the community. When a person comes back to your program or your jailhouse or your storefront over and over again, that's a continuum of care. It's not a readmit. It'll change your numbers in your recidivism pool, if you will. If the person come back, you tell whoever is your funding source, this is continuum of care. It's not a readmission. Because then recidivism will become a little pamphlet. All the reports, you might could fit them on one page. The other thing I want you all to realize is that I would not be here if it wasn't for people like y'all that got it. Somebody eventually got it. I can't tell you, and I'm sure somebody's going to ask me this later on, what was the thing that changed it? I can't tell you the time. I cannot tell you the date. The only person that always come back to me whenever I'm sharing my story, and sometimes I have a PowerPoint that's got my picture on it because I can't believe I'm here, is Miss Kaufman, the lady that gave me the clean underpants and the $2. That's not $19,000. That's not $4 billion. That was some clean, probably some dollar store underpants and $2. Somebody that, when I was sitting in the waiting room, said, look, I'm very, very busy. We got 7 other clients coming. While you're out here, you give everybody their intake papers and tell them the doctor is on its way. Nobody never asked me to be helpful. That didn't cost a dime. That cost somebody thinking different, like, I don't know what this stinky girl in here doing, but if she can hand out them intake forms, we got a bet going on, you know. And when people started coming in, that's what I was doing. How you doing? You waiting on Dr. Peterson? Well, here's your papers. Fill these out. He'll be there. And guess what I did once my intake happened? I went back the next day. Before you know it, I had a little job going on. Wasn't getting paid a dime. I was getting paid no attention. But that made me feel useful. And you know what ended up happening 3 years later? I ran that center. I ran that center for 4 years. And from that, I spent off and opened up a drop-in center. And because I opened up the drop-in center, which was eligible for grants, but of course we didn't have a 501c3, nor did we have articles of incorporation or bylaws, I decided I needed to go back to school. So I got my GED, and I got my undergraduate degree, and got my master's degree, and started working on my PhD. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm on to something. You know, something happening up in here. You know, I don't smell anymore. People are coming to me saying, Sharon, how do you do individual advocacy? People are coming to me saying, look, I'm in a certain class, and they're trying to put us out of our sight. What do we do? And I miss Senator Wellston so much, because it was him and Senator DeMonacy and Senator Kennedy who actually brought me to the table around mental health parity. When we started fighting and making sure that people with mental health diagnoses, that we get the same kind of care and lymph stays in the hospital as somebody with a physical problem do. All of that happened because of people like you all believing in me. I didn't always believe in myself. Y'all heard my story, and I didn't even tell y'all the half of it because I don't have time. And I don't want y'all to be in here crying. Cry for Argentina, not for me. I don't want you all to think that poor little girl, what happened to her? Her mother should have been ashamed of her, and she didn't know her father and things like that. Guess what? I got me a whole new mama. Her name's Cindy Schwartz. And don't we look just alike? And my daddy is Judge Lightman, and Gail, all of them is my people now. Somebody asked me who I'm kin to, I'm going to be like, everybody in this room, we are kin by virtue of the fact that we're either trying to help somebody, trying to hurt somebody, or we are that somebody. That's what makes us kinfolk, you know. And from running those organizations, I have moved on, and I've started many organizations. Right now, I have a youth organization. We have 3 sites. I've continued to run We All We Got, which is a grant program. We are the interceptors to when people are coming out of the prison system, we give them a $100 grant. We pick them up from the jailhouse. We take them to AA meetings, NA meetings. We do all kinds of stuff from them. And let me tell you something, I don't get any money from the state. 100% of my funding comes from my own purse. And yes, I juggle my light bill sometimes to buy coats in the wintertime. And from the community. They support what I do. They support what I do because I don't just talk this thing, I walk this thing. In other words, like they say in psychology, I am congruent. And a lot of you all are too. Because I see y'all here, and I see some people taking notes. And I see some people probably looking and saying, you know what? I'm going to come out and I'm going to crank out me a Sharon Wise. Because I'm going to tell you, I am not unique by any source of the word. There are a lot of Sharon Wise. There are a lot of people who are doing what I'm doing. I was in San Antonio, Texas. I hope I see my dear friend Fred Osher here somewhere. But I remember me and Judge Lightman and Hank Stedman and a bunch of us I think we was creating an intercept model or working on the intercept model when I found out I had won the 2010 CIT award for my work with the police officers, you know, training them on arrests and things like that. And I only got involved with that work after it was 2 shootings in the District of Columbia, you know, people who had mental health diagnoses and they just didn't understand the orders that the police were giving them, and they were shot and killed. That kind of just reiterated the fact that anybody can take their painful situation and these adversities that they've gone through and make something positive out of them. Because you know what? It's real easy for something really tragic to happen for everybody to march on D.C. But what about getting involved and changing it? What about getting involved and making a difference, writing letters, HB 117, oh, don't go play it in the lottery. Write some letters. And that's what my whole life is about now. I don't want my pain to be something that I get mad about, and I would still be in a mental hospital. I would still be cutting my wrists. I would still be burning myself with cigarettes if I was doing that. But instead, I want to let this be a labor of love, that I go around and I use my compassion as fire. My 99-year-old grandmother says very well. She said, anger doesn't point the finger, it points the direction. I like that. George Eliot says, it's never too late to be what you might have been. I love that. Matter of fact, I was going to get it across the T-shirt until one of the attorneys over here told me that would be infringement. When you know better, you do better. And I do, because now I reach for the low-hanging fruit. I look at what's available to me now, and I take advantage of it to make a positive imprint in somebody else's life. I got the 5-minute closing sign, so I'm going to close with this. We need mental health services that are not cookie cutter, no one-size-fits-all. When people are coming out of your system, they need wraparound services long before. I think discharge should start when people are admitted. It should not happen 2 days before they leave out. Partnerships, we're not doing the stakeholder thing anymore, y'all. We're doing the shareholders. Shareholders mean you share information if you can get around the 420-290-EE-3. Y'all know what that is, the confidentiality stuff. Because so many people that have touched my life, I share my inspiration and motivation with everybody. Who would have ever thought a drug addict, homeless teen mother with no hope, broken dreams, major trauma, and despair would be standing here today with a whole lot of hope? Knowing that I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep on going around. People say, Sharon, do you need a mic? Nope, I have a really big mouth. And I use it to inspire and let people know, use the people that you're serving as partners. Please do not let that investment get away. I take into account that my story can possibly inspire somebody, hopefully even the judges, and even primarily the judge that spoke about, that came up earlier, Judge Spicer. I'm sorry, I used to smoke weed, so I don't be remembering stuff all the time, so I have to write stuff down. But the judge that talked about, just those specialty courts, because that's what's needed also, and I'm sure that you all have a lot of them here, that you just take a little bit of what I might say and say, you know what, I got a client that reminds me of Sharon, who I want to kick out and sentence to 500 years and 2 Wednesdays, that probably just need some kind of other type of services. And that you know that love is possible, and sometimes that's the only necessary ingredients to polish a diamond. I know I was an uncut diamond, and I looked like a rock when I walked in. I had all kind of jagged edges and scratch marks and scuff marks and stuff on me. But people like you all, you polished me with your tears, with your words of encouragement. You sent me to school. You made sure I got good mental health services and some other type of services. And today, finally, I have both of my children back in my life. I just found my daughter on Facebook 3 years ago. She was 26 years old. And the really funny story is that she worked for United Airlines, so now wherever I go, she might be sitting in the lobby when I get there telling me, hey, Ma. So I always talk to my sisters, and I say, be careful what you ask for when you ask for your children back. She came with 2 little boys in tow. Now I'm a grandmother of 3 little grandsons. I'm a up-and-coming filmmaker. I've been meddling with the film industry and different things like that, so watch out, Steven Spielberg. And it all happened because of people like y'all. Just believing in me. So believe in the people that you're serving. Don't write them off. Rome wasn't built in a day. You'd have gone to Rome in one day and been like, what the hell? But now you look at Rome and it's such a beautiful place. So it may not happen overnight like we want it to. This is a microwave recovery. It ain't instant lottery. It's about one day at a time, because one day at a time is what's got me up here shining. That's my story, and guess what? I'm sticking to it. Thank you.